Yo, 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 ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and of course, all my lovely theys out there. I'm Ashton Gene Luce. It's been a while since I've said it, so I'll say it again. This is the place for the best and the worst that sports has to offer every single week. Welcome to the Broke Boy Sports Podcast. Love that for me personally. I'd like to open today's show with a very clear declaration, and I hope they're listening because I mean this in the most disrespectful way possible. I fucking hate Streamlabs. Like, I have done nothing but honestly put so much content out via Streamlabs that it's kind of absurd how bad this system is overall. This show is starting 15 minutes, quote unquote, late. As you know, the show is always never on time. So for me to say something is late, it actually means something because it's, the time where I felt I was ready. I wanted to go through and do all the stuff that I normally do. And then it just didn't fucking happen because I had to spend 15 minutes reconnecting my YouTube account, which is already connected to my Google account, which is what I use to sign into Streamlabs, meaning that all that stuff should have already happened. It's because Streamlabs wants the ability Streamlabs wants the ability to basically delete any comment, add anything, delete any video that they want to via Streamlabs from my YouTube account. So all but can guarantee you I will be discontinuing the use of Streamlabs because that's insane. Not to start off on a sour and dour note after such a long period of time off, but, we got a lot of stuff to get through, and it felt like Streamlabs was kind of plotting against your boy, and I don't like that. I got enough things already going against me when it comes to, like, putting this podcast on, most of it dealing with the immense amount of research it takes to put this thing together, but luckily today I have a pretty simple premise. It's preview everything going on in the NFL season. As we lead up to it in less than an hour, because kickoff at 7 p.m. in Brazil. By the way, in case you're wondering, yes, my fantasy football problem has gotten significantly worse. This year, we are in 12 different leagues across 3 different apps. We're on Yahoo, ESPN, and sleeper apps. Thank God, nobody that I know that I'm in the league for anymore. I was in a $1,000 winners league for NFL, but I hate I'm gonna be honest, I'm one of those people, if I'm power ranking, the NFL app is like dead last for me personally. I like ESPN a good amount, but I like Sleeper a lot more. Sleeper seems to be an app for like actual football fans, which is pretty cool. It just doesn't have like all the licensing and big deal stuff behind it, but I think Sleeper is more than likely going to be the future in terms of like taking over that number 2 spot. Yahoo, I think, also makes like a shit ton of money off fantasy, but for me personally, it's like the third slot. It always feels like the screen is like really cramped with stuff that's going on. I will say this, across the board, the information that is provided by all the journalists who write the blurbs for each player in terms of like sourcing material from articles and stuff like that, I can appreciate because if it wasn't for there's so many people who think they're too good to like read articles and like, pay attention to like media and stuff like that, but if it wasn't for them, most of you guys would be significantly worse at fantasy football. And don't forget, guys, ladies and gentlemen, everybody out there playing fantasy football, remember, everybody thinks they know what the fuck's going to happen, and just like it has the NFL is 75 years old, I think, or something. They claim to be 75 years old. We all know about how the NFL and the AFL used to be 2 different leagues, and then they merged together and took on the name of the NFL or whatever, and they count all the years that the AFL existed before the NFL, right? Because I think NFL 75 was 5 years ago. Oh, man. But yeah. If I'm lucky enough, I'll be allowed to see Super Bowl 100. We'll see how that goes for me. Anyway, just going back to it, just like every person that thinks that they know exactly what's going to happen, they don't, which is the beauty of fantasy. Most of you motherfuckers don't know what the hell's going on, including myself, until I do my NFL review episodes. Because every episode, I think I know what's going on just a little bit more. We got 5 questions to start off this show. And, we have 5 questions to do this entire show. And each one of those 5 questions will get me and you a little bit more clarity about what I think about the NFL season. If you want a more in-depth NFL season preview, you can go check out the 50 Billion Other podcast. My goal now that I'm back and have the energy to be able to do this show again is to try and do concepts that, one, I want to do and things that are actually going to stick out of the crowd instead of just talking about football into a microphone, because the production part of this is something that I honestly still need to continue to work on, and then on top of that, pay the money that it takes to be able to pull that shit off. Anyway, if you are watching this show, make sure you drop a follow. Appreciate that. To anybody who does so on YouTube, you can subscribe at Broke Boy Sports. You can check out the Broke Boy Sports Twitter account. The only thing that happens there is it tweets out when the show starts, and then I retweet some other podcasts that I think you should listen to as well. Other stuff, follow my main sports account at FB_playbook. It is not football. I used to be a high school sports reporter, and the area I used to cover was called Fort Bend, and the FB stands for Fort Bend, not football. At some point when that account gets like over the account's like relatively close to 5,000 followers or whatever, but at some point I'm going to have to explain that like 1,000,000,001 times because I'm not a football expert. I'm a person who enjoys football quite a bit to the point where it was not the first, second, third, fourth, or fifth sport I ever started playing. I didn't play football until I got to college. Yeah, I know, weird, right? And it was D1 football. It was a big wake-up call, but I appreciate more so offensive linemen and how impressive it is that they're able to just block for 3 seconds at a time. Anyway, make sure you follow me across all sports platforms. In particular, if you want to see more of my individual thoughts as a human being about non-sports things. Sometimes it's about sports. A lot of the time, it's about the challenge and things that are going on in the world that I retweet. I read Reuters a lot. I feel like Reuters is somewhat close to unbiased, but there's no such thing as the beauty of the beauty and horror of humanity is the lack of people's lack of ability to be unbiased. But yeah, anyway, we got 5 questions. I think it's 5. I want to say it's 5. It may not be 5. And we're just going to take it from the top, man. If you see me acting weird, I'm definitely going to cut out portions of this podcast to later post to Instagram and TikTok and stuff like that. So I think I'm going to do it relatively normally, but we'll find out. But we are going to talk about football. Let's go. So I got the top 3 teams. Obviously, we're going to start super negative. The top 3 teams most likely to go winless this season. This is after painstaking research, tons of intuition that goes along with it as well. Also looking through the trash can of multiple NFL players to come up with this information. The last part was kind of a joke. The number 1 team that I feel like could go winless this season for me personally is the New York Giants. I've never, well, okay, I won't say never. You rarely get to see a team actually get its comeuppance and its karma backlash on it. The New York Giants have been pretty disrespectful to Saquon Barkley the last couple of years. They have, lauded him as one of the best players on the team. Yes, for sure. Money-wise, been massively disrespectful. Some of the fans even, because now he's not on the team anymore, they talk shit about him. I find it hilarious that a New York Giants fan could think that any form of success that they've had the last, 5-6 years has come from anything other than the legs of Saquon Barkley. And if you were stupid enough to 2 years ago believe that Daniel Jones had somehow turned a corner and developed into some kind of amazing quarterback, despite all the evidence to the contrary, and then not also pay attention subsequently to the one factor that the Daniel Jones's major breakout year is directly correlated with the first full healthy season from Saquon Barkley. I don't think you know how the game go. That's not how the game go. But yeah, no, like the Giants essentially are done in by the fact that they are overinvested in a guy who does not play up to the caliber of quarterback that you need to be able to, 1, survive their division, and then 2, to be effective in a playoff situation. The messed up part about this whole thing is that the Giants defense showed a lot of this last season, and they'll show it again this year as well, because they've gotten significantly better on one side of the ball, because there seems to be some kind of plan in terms of all the free agency money is going to the defensive side of the ball, right? The willingness to move picks is going to the defensive side of the ball. The offensive side, they're trying to draft superstars, which kind of makes sense because those positions are quote-unquote premiums at a high rate right now. And so if you can draft a guy who can be like a top 15 wide receiver or a top 30 wide receiver off the bat and get a couple of those guys, you can make a lot of things happen for you that'll subsequently work out for you on the back end. Another team that's eerily similar to this, I would say, is the New Orleans Saints, who the New Orleans Saints are very similar in the same fact that they heavily invested financially on the defensive side of the ball while they had the offensive powerhouse with Drew Brees. But nonetheless, the number one team in my minds and my thoughts to go winless this season is 100% the New York Giants, without question. Number two on that list is the New Orleans Saints. This is directly correlated to some coaching decisions that I saw last season, mostly having a running back like Jamal Williams and then actively choosing not to use him, trying to change his position, because I have a strange feeling Jamal Williams didn't sign up to be used as a fullback, but whatever. The things that come to mind overall is just some of the poor coaching decisions in terms of like offensive scheme, right? Like the lack of ability to push the ball down the field, not really seeing a ton of changes in personnel, because let's be real about the Saints. Basically the last like 5 to 6 years, there's been a slow progression of talent out and not enough of talent in to match that progression of the talent that's going out. Combine that with the fact that pretty much every major player for the New Orleans Saints has been run into the ground to the point where they've missed massive portions of time as a player. We could talk about Alvin Kamara's suspension, but even before that, Alvin Kamara was hurt in a big way for the most part. The other stuff you talk about, they have Marcus Lattimore. Why do I always call him Marcus? They have Lattimore on their team, who's like top 5 cornerback in the NFL, but you wouldn't know based off last season because he spent most of it hurt, and that happens. You know what I mean? The only real superstar that they've had two stars on their team that they can count on health wise, and it's obviously Cameron Jordan and Demario Davis, who is like top 10 in the league in terms of being a linebacker. Really, honestly, like top 5 if you want to be real about it. We can talk about linebacker ranking some other time though. Demario Davis, Cam Jordan. Sad to say, both of those guys play defense, and the Saints' defense was spectacular last season. Too bad those guys can't catch passes and run power to the right. You know what I mean? And that has been a big problem. Chris Olave seems to be one of the major points of emphasis in terms of focusing on him, because he's the new Michael Thomas. Congratulations, the new Aunt Viv, Chris Olave. That happens. The biggest issue, I think, is the lack of creativity in terms of the offensive approach, and that hindering the ceiling for the Saints. If there was a team that I could see falling off the rails and not being able to get back on, because it did happen last season, it would be the New Orleans Saints, without question. Most likely, honestly, the Patriots, they're number 3 on this list, but they're number 3 on this list because of something that I and you, watching at home, have come to know and hate, especially if you're a black person, in the realm of sports. The New England Patriots have entered a new era. They've had Bill Belichick walk out the door seemingly very pissed off about how it all ended. Obviously, there's, at the end of the day, I talk about this formative moment of me in my sports life. The day I woke up and I saw that Peyton Manning was cut from the Colts, I realized most people just get fired when it comes to playing at that high a level, right? And there was only one way it was going to work for Bill Belichick, and it's the fact that he got to ride it till the wheels come off, right? And the wheels came off, really, let's be real, 3 years prior to what happened last season. So turns out when you don't have the greatest quarterback in the history of football, you can't be creative and weird like everybody else. That happens. But the big thing to take away from this is that with the exit of the greatest coach in the history of the team, and probably one of the greatest, if not the second greatest, if not the greatest coach in the history of NFL football, there is the entry of former black player, now turned head coach, when the team is not spending money, because 2 years ago they spent the most money they've ever spent in free agency and got basically no wins for it. Jeremy's in the midst of a setup. And he's smart enough to know that, you know what I mean? He's walking into it. If you're a Houston Texans fan, Dave Culley had the same situation happen to him. And for some reason, and this is how you can actually tell the intelligence level of a sports fan that you're talking to, because this same exact formula gets rehashed over and over again, and there's still fans of football that think that this is like a legitimate shot for somebody to turn around a franchise when it takes more than great schematics, great practice habits, great timing and stuff like that. It takes the full investment of people behind you to actually provide talent, right? If the base level of expectation when you come to work is that you have to massively overachieve every single day to earn people's support, to put money behind your overachieving, you are inherently being set up to fail, which I believe is what Jared Mayo's being set up to do. Same thing with Jacoby Brissett. There's all the signs in the world. If you're a black person, you've seen this a million times in a row. All of a sudden, we got a black starting quarterback. All of a sudden, we got a black head coach. We out here making history, everybody. First black head coach in the history of the New England Patriots. Don't ask why though. Anyway, honorable mention, I put the Tennessee Titans. 1, because I'm a hater. 2, because I like legitimately look at their roster and I see immense amount of talent across the board, especially in the secondary position, and I think that goes a long way when you talk about how you build teams in the NFL. Nick Caserio is a big believer of, the back to the front. So positions furthest away from the ball to the positions closest to the ball, and that's the order of priority essentially. But we still have people who skip over like the middle part where like the linebackers at. Anyway, they have Jeffrey Simmons, obviously going to be a huge impactful player at all times, but I think now you talk about the addition of L'Jarius Sneed, that's going to be huge for him, because one of the biggest issues that the Titans have had the last couple of years is definitely some effectiveness when it comes to drafting cornerbacks. But for the most part, I can see second-year quarterback coming off of a rough year now without somebody that you can wholeheartedly depend upon in the backfield. Yes, Tony Pollard, clearly very talented running back, but the fact of the matter is, dude broke his leg 2 years ago. Freak stuff happens. I'm a Texans and a Seahawks fan. I don't know if Tank Dell is going to be the superstar that ever. I don't think Tank Dell is about to come out here and tear the whole world apart. Again, he's coming off a pretty rough offseason that ended, his offseason started early because of his leg getting broken. You know what I mean? I think that weighs heavy on a lot of people. But I see the talent. I question the coaching. New head coach, right? Whole new approach to everything like that. Still not a believer in Will Levis for me personally. Yes, we've seen some major flashes from Will Levis as a player. In particular, I think back to that. I think it was Thursday Night Football versus the Packers, and it probably is some of the best football best quarterbacking the Titans fans have seen in a while after Ryan Tannehill left. Did you guys know that Ryan Tannehill used to play wide receiver in college? Sorry, I'm legally obligated to say that every time somebody says his name. Anyway, moving on. Those are the three teams. The three teams in the honorable mention. That's why. If you got a beef with it, I don't really know what else to tell you. Hit me up on Twitter. Let me know. Follow me on IG at the Ashton Forever. We can talk about it, I guess. This is basically just off of what I've seen. Some of this is definitely directly connected to coaching as well. The last two are connected to coaching. The Saints and the Titans are connected to coaching. The other two, not so much. But yeah, we'll see. Top three teams most likely to go undefeated. That's right, we got to do the opposite if we're going to do winless. Number 1 on my list, the Baltimore Ravens. And it's one word that I can say defines what I truly believe in this situation, and it's versatility. I look at the Ravens roster, group of players, and coaching, and I see a team last year that won in a multitude of ways. Explosive plays from Zay Flowers. Now they're adding in one of the best, if not one of the best running backs of all time, a guy who, if he wins a Super Bowl, is basically a guaranteed lock for the Hall of Fame. Right now, you could even statistically argue in his era a lock for the Hall of Fame. And Derrick Henry, we'll see. The reigning MVP in Lamar Jackson, plus the continuation of the Zay Flowers edition. Yes, they're going through some changes in terms of the coaching staff, but the defensive talent is unquestioned across the board for the Baltimore Ravens. That goes a long way in terms of them being successful. We saw them show a ton of different versions of the Ravens in one season, and I think that's what it takes to be dominant, to really go out there and win every single game that you come across. And that's why the San Francisco 49ers are number 2 on my list, because they, for the past 3 years, have been one of those teams where you look at the lineup, you look at the roster, you see their typical play call, you see their typical approach to football in general, and there's so much versatility in it that it's hard to see how many different, or how teams are able to beat them every single year. And that's why they don't lose all that often, right? Now they've got a quarterback that they can actually believe in and go out there and make some plays happen, and I think that goes a long way. The number 3, this is the dark horse in the undefeated category, if you will. The Jets had probably a top 2 defense in the NFL last season, and they've gotten better. They now have an offense that at the very least is going to be able to hold on to the ball for more than 3 downs. I think we can all agree an elite defense with rest is even better overall. And so also there'll be more points on the board, right? A lot of people, obviously they're making a lot of jokes about Aaron Rodgers. I, for one, have found Aaron Rodgers to be a wannabe smart guy, and that's coming from a wannabe smart guy, right? I never pray for the downfall or injury of a player or anything like that, but banking on something like an Achilles tear to happen again for Aaron Rodgers to completely derail the Jets season is highly unlikely if you're one of those people. And obviously there's people in the division of the Jets that want that to happen. But for the most part, even if you get like a mid Aaron Rodgers, you're going to get a team that has the ability to carry a quarterback. Like Aaron Rodgers is in that same era, very similar era to where Peyton Manning was, where he gets carried by the defense and the run game all the way to the Super Bowl and wins the whole thing. You know what I mean? And that's just my personal opinion. But yeah, that's why I think all 3 of those teams can go undefeated. Obviously, it takes a shit ton of talent, takes some good coaching, and the right mix, because you got to have some luck that's mixed in there. You go back and you watch some of those Patriots games when they went undefeated. I think about the Ravens game in particular, which is the one they came closest to losing, despite what people will tell you about the game versus the Giants during the regular season. But yeah, whatevs. Moving on. Terrible transition. Number 1 team that I think is going to go from sitting on the couch during the playoffs to the actual playoffs, and it's the Indianapolis Colts. I don't think we're talking about this enough. Anthony Richardson is very clearly a superstar. That's why, well, one, the AFC South is going to be the toughest division in football this season, because Will Levis and the Tennessee Titans would probably be a division winner in a couple of these other divisions. And there's, like I said before, there's a very good chance they go winless because of the stoutness of their division overall. I feel like the Jacksonville Jaguars with Trevor Lawrence, it's not like I'm talking about a bounce back season for Trevor Lawrence. What I do realize and what I did see last year when I watched every single one of the Jags games is a lot of hesitation, a lot of trepidation from Trevor Lawrence as the season went on. But luckily for them, their team was so versatile and so talented, they were able to lean back and rely on Travis Etienne to carry them to a shit ton of victories last season. But yeah, the Colts, a team that had a top 10, top 5 defense in the NFL last season, now has a superstar quarterback with more offensive talent at the wide receiver position and Jonathan Taylor Thomas out there doing the thing. They are a complete football team. It is bad here in the South. It is bad in the AFC South. And the Colts are a part of it. They are, I don't get the number of people who are just like, oh, well, was it? He's like, well, he got hurt because he wasn't good last year. I was like, yeah, sure, he got hurt. I think he had like double-digit touchdowns 3 games into the season. You guys are hilarious. There was a game last season where the Colts played, I want to say the Jaguars, and Anthony Richardson had 3 touchdowns and like 200 yards before halftime after he got hurt and like couldn't come back into the game, right? Gardner Minshew took over. They won that game because Gardner blew up. Gardner's the new number 1 backup quarterback in the NFL. Even though he is a starter, he is the number 1 on the power rankings of backup quarterback. But yeah, man, it's not even close. To me personally, it's not close. The Colts, they saw some success. They saw a ton of success last year in terms of the defensive side of the ball, but the offense just wasn't there. This season, it's a fucking wrap. If there was one team that is legitimate competition, I'm highly worried that they are going to be better than the Texans. It is the Colts. If you are a Texans fan, you know the Texans' history with playing the Colts in Lucas Oil Stadium. Very similar to how Team USA Soccer cannot beat Mexico in Azteca Stadium. Go look up the home record for the Colts versus the Texans. I'm pretty sure the Texans who have existed and played the Colts twice a year. Well, really, they've played in Indianapolis once a year for. This is 2024. The Texans came into existence in 2022. That is, what is it? Wow, 22 chances to be able to beat the Colts at home. And I think they've done it like 5 times. It's insane. A lot of that's because of Peyton Manning, but also there's like one time they lost to, I want to say, Curtis Painter at the quarterback position because Gary Brackett pulled off a pick 6 off Sage Rosenfels in Indianapolis. It's one of the most absurd home records versus the team in the NFL, and people don't talk about it enough because people don't talk about the Colts and they don't talk about the Texans. Anyway, but yeah, the Colts look like they are primed to be the breakout team of the season, and it's like not even close to me personally. And this is the final one for me. The 2 biggest mysteries of the NFL season coming up. It is number 1, I want to see teams trying some weird kickoff shit, right? We haven't been able to see the special teams go full bore for the most part, even though there's a lot of situations where like preseason you are looking at a good chunk of what people believe special teams is going to look like for the season, because if you can't make special teams, you can't make the team for a lot of these dudes. Unless you're one of the 22 starters and one of the primary backups, you got to be out there on special teams doing your job. Kickoff has changed drastically. If you've forgotten, you can go look up the 1,000,001 videos that have been made about why they changed kickoff to make it safer, but also allow for action to happen. A different type of kicker, a kicker with more precision, is now going to be needed as opposed to a kicker who just has a strong leg. And I think that'll change some concepts of like how teams play this whole thing out. Are people going to be trying to dial up yardages and distances for certain setups? And honestly, there's got to be some kind of gap in these really, when you have like all these oddly specific rules about where certain things have to be, there has to be some kind of gap of logic that exists that just takes time for somebody to figure out, right? And week 1 probably is going to be the number 1 time where you see a lot of this shit go down. Because look, it's the NFL season. What is it? The rule is the first 4 games of the season, basically you can't go 0-4. Teams, the percentage of teams that have started the season 0-4 and made the playoffs is in the single digits. And that's after like years of history. Even with the expanded playoffs, obviously the statistics around the expanded playoffs with the extra wildcard seed is going to be drastically different. But when it all comes down to it, that is a massive factor for a lot of these teams. But week 1 is still the point of the season where experimentation is going to help you more than it will hinder you for the most part. Well, at least we'll find out. Also, number 2 thing in terms of mysteries for me is running the football back. We've progressively heard a lot of aggressive conversation about the devaluing of the running back position. We all saw what happened. All the running backs got into a group chat last year to talk about like some kind of semi-union effort situation, which begs the question of like, what does the union do when certain positions that are heavily utilized but underpaid are basically being exploited? That is essentially what running backs are currently in this situation. Now, I point this out. I ask this question because there's a lot of people who are upset. There's a lot more people, and this is what I've learned as time has gone on with all these fucking fantasy leagues that I'm in. There's too many people who are now concerned only about fantasy football, as opposed to just like caring about football as a whole. And, you know, there's that. Those are not the people I want to watch football with. I've learned that. I have a friend who's like that. I respect him. Really think he's a great guy. It's tough talking football with him, right? I have a friend who's like not a sports guy at all, and fantasy football gets him into football. And that's why the NFL is so gung-ho about fantasy football. It gets people who are like not even football fans, even when they are playing fantasy football, to play football. That connects to the fact that there's this obsession with points that come from, in particular, quarterbacks, because quarterbacks produce points for wide receivers and produce points for themselves. So they are one of the most valued positions, regardless of the type of league you play in. Quarterback is one of the most important positions because there's the ability to double up on points, all that kind of stuff like that. Anyway, why that all connects to this question is running back. That's my big thing. I have to ask myself this all the time because as time has gone on, linebackers have gotten smaller. D linemen they're still freak athletes. I don't know why I even brought that up. Linebackers have gotten smaller. DBs have gotten a little bit taller. But fact of the matter is, the emphasis on speed across the board has resulted in lighter defenses. Defensive players in general weigh significantly less than they did 10 years ago because that's the new meta. It's having a defense that can operate in a zone, which means the ability to cover a ton of space very, very quickly, right? And that usually doesn't happen for guys who are larger. And I take great offense to that as a fat guy. I cover a lot of space, initially. Right, and as time goes on, I get slower at covering that space. Anyway, that's what the NFL has basically come to, right? A ton of speed, a ton of people who are all around like the same height and same size as well. Like you're starting to see that happen, but that's a conversation for another day. These lighter defenses have opened the door to advantageous windows, and that window is big people hitting small people, which in sports is good for the big people and bad for the small people. Look at the Philadelphia Eagles. They made the Super Bowl 2 years ago, right? They had the biggest, nastiest offensive line in terms of run scheme because their big people were very fast. Their big people were very agile. And with the speed factor being almost neutralized by the agility of the big people, the little people became less effective at defending the Eagles' offense. And that has been, that's been one of the big talking points of offensive linemen becoming more valued in the sense that offensive linemen are over 300 pounds, which means they're the heaviest people on the field. And so when they get their hands on literally anybody who's not a defensive lineman, the defense loses, like badly. And I went back and I looked at it, and I looked at something, and it happens every single year, but especially the last couple of years. The smart teams are running the ball. The smart teams that don't have Patrick Mahomes, they are run-based teams. 6 of the top 10 teams in the league in rushing yards were playoff teams last year. 3 of those 4 teams made it to the conference championships, and all 3 of those 4 teams were in the top 5 in rushing. It was the Ravens, the 49ers, and the Lions. They are valuing the run, and it is opening doors that were not open to them before. They are able to take quarterbacks who you don't consider elite, like Jared Goff, as far as 1 game away from the Super Bowl, bro. Because they lost to a team in the San Francisco 49ers with a quarterback that you don't consider elite either. The value of running backs, I think, with the elite teams is super high. For instance, the big X factor for the Jets this season is Breece Hall. Is running coming back is the question. Running has become way more important than it feels like it has been in the past 5-6 years, with the sudden belief and concept behind the value of the pass game. And I think what really has happened is common sense has started to take over, where it's like, well, there's 32 starting quarterbacks, and at some point, regardless of how good all of them are, one of them has to be the best. 5 of them have to be the 5 best. 10 of them have to be the 10 best. You got to find other ways to win football games than being able to throw the ball with the best quarterback. Because great quarterbacks still need really good wide receivers. Next level wide receivers are still very hard to come by, despite the sudden rise in the value of high quality wide receivers. Right, 7-on-7 has paved a huge avenue for the wide receiver position, the running back position, and the quarterback position, DBs as well, and linebackers in some cases. But it has changed the game. 7-on-7 is easily the biggest impact on football that we are seeing at the NFL and the collegiate level as well. It has changed the way that athletes train. It has changed the intelligence level of the average football player when they get to college. It has changed what they are physically capable of doing drastically without exposing them to the dangerous level of contact that happens on a football game over the course of an entire season. That's all I got. I would sit here and go down all you know what? I'll do it. Hello. Let's see. We got a message in here. This is man, I'm trying to fix something here real quick, man. We got a message in chat. This is hello, this is Greg from Stockton, California. By the way, name the famous athlete from Stockton. No one. The toughest man on earth. Duh. The other thing is, what else? Oh, Stockton is also where the Sacramento Kings G League team is at. The Stockton Kings. They had a black woman as their head coach, and I think she's now an assistant in the NBA. Shout out Stockton. He asked, first of all, he says hello, my name is Greg from Stockton, California. What do you think of the Vikings this year? I'm not gonna lie to you, Greg. Be honest with you, the Vikings were in contention for this list. This list earlier, a couple hours ago. And the thing that really took me over the edge, I went and looked at the roster overall, and I saw a lot of talent. Obviously, Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson aren't going to be as effective as far as we know right now. I know a couple of years ago there was this big movement for people to talk about how Sam Darnold actually should be the starting quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers, despite what we have seen from Sam Darnold in the past. I'm very concerned about KOC. Kevin O'Connell, who's the head coach of the Vikings. I don't know if you would call what he's gotten in his coaching tenure a fair shake. Obviously, when he's gotten Kirk Cousins for an entire season, they had the whole thing where Kirk Cousins threw a check down on 4th down that ended the Vikings season. I think it was 3rd and 7 or something, or 4th and 7 or something like that. But that is an interesting question. Feels like the Vikings, because one, I think we all forget there's this weird article that came out last season where they were like, oh yeah, the Vikings invented a defense that has never existed. And Cameron Bynum is the reason that works. I thought it was super cool to be able to sit there and be like, man, football's been around for over 100 years and people are still inventing new stuff. You know what I mean? It's very much like the cover 2 was invented by an old New England Patriots coach or whatever. So to hear a guy who used to be a Patriots guy, who's now the DC for the Vikings, invent a new defense, and then have this quote-unquote random player in Cameron Bynum be the centerpiece of it, and then how drastically it changed the Viking season with, obviously, with Josh Dobbs doing a really good job at the quarterback position. But I'd be pretty worried just off the strength of the division, right? The Vikings seem like the only team that took a massive step back at the quarterback position, but there's no guarantee that J.J. McCarthy was going to work out, right? Like, there's just hope springs eternal. And that's my problem right now. When I look at so many of these teams in the NFL, I looked across the board. I had a tough time coming up with the most likely to go winless list. Last year was pretty easy because there were some starting quarterbacks that just weren't in, and there was also like a massive dearth of known talent for a lot of these players across the board. But like, I looked at the distribution of talent, and it feels like the teams are like way more even than they usually are to start off the season the last couple of years that I've had to do the winless list. So I think the Vikings, I would not, in my mind, put them in contention for any of the wild card spots just because their division is so tough overall. But when it's all said and done, they still feel like they have the talent that can overcome, that can help them beat some of these teams that we really don't have a good beat on. In there, obviously, if you don't know, NFC North, the Chicago Bears, the Minnesota Vikings, that is the Detroit Lions, and the Green Bay Packers. Three of those four, like, obviously all the hype is around the Bears because Caleb Williams seems like the best quarterback they've literally ever had, and he hasn't thrown a single pass in a single season. He hasn't thrown a single pass this season yet. They also have a ton of talent around him as well. So even if Caleb Williams isn't a superstar off rip, there's a very, very good chance, good possibility that the talent could elevate Caleb Williams until he figures out how to play really well. In the NFL, we're also talking about a guy who compared himself to Patrick Mahomes and said that looks pretty easy. So we'll see how it all shakes out, but this is like the most hope that the Bears have ever had, I would dare say. They've had in a long time, right? That isn't just bravado. And I think that goes a long way. They look like this is the best the Bears have looked on paper in a long time. Other stuff in relation to that division, the Detroit Lions, clearly immensely talented. Interested to see what their defense looks like because I think that was a big point of emphasis last season where it's like, man, they come up clutch. The defense came up clutch in a lot of key situations. They have a really good defensive coordinator, former player, and stuff like that. But how the longevity of the defense that they've built is up for question. Me personally, I think the linebacker position is an issue for the Lions, but we'll see. But everybody else, like the Packers, look, man, I don't think there's ever going to be a run in sports like what the Packers have had at quarterback in a long, long time. But yeah, it feels like Jordan Love is amazing for Packers fans, while it is disappointing to not be able to get to this point like 3 years ago when the defense that they have now, or the defense they used to have, was like kind of at its height. 4 years ago, really, more so than anything. And not to have Jordan Love was kind of tough. But yeah, like the Packers have done a ton to make themselves like a legitimate threat, and it just feels like the Vikings are the team that's like the odd man out because we're still, I would definitely say KLC has proven himself to be really effective at the head coaching position. I would say they've also done a great job of like gathering talent together, especially guys that you didn't suspect were super good off rip. Moving on from the running back position, you talk about they've got Aaron Jones now. They think that's going to be a big impact for their offense as a whole, but it feels like the pieces are there, but can they all, if there was a team that's like all the pieces are there, but can it come together? It's the Vikings, like at the top of the list without question for me. Anyway, that's all I got for this. The NFL season starts in like 30 minutes. I would go through, do people want me to go through and just talk like, all right, if you insist, guys, I'll just go through the schedule and just read off who I think is going to win, even though we all, none of us know off rip, right? Like, they're very, at the end of the day, somebody's got to win. At the end of the day got to end, right? Ravens, Chiefs tonight. I picked the Ravens to be an undefeated team. I'm definitely picking them tonight to go out here and win this. I'm very interested to see how the Chiefs defense looks because they were a top 5 defense last year, and they still have Steve Spagnuolo, who's a genius, tactical mastermind, if you will. The Packers play the Eagles. That's going to be fun. Definitely taking the Packers, though. In that one, to be able to pull it off, that's a Friday night game. Interested to see what the Packers' run game looks like in this one overall. But the Eagles, it feels like we still got defensive problems, like major defensive problems, especially since Devin White's not playing in this game. He hurt his ankle, and it's not fully recovered yet. Something that I think that's been like a thing for him the last like 2 years or something like that. By the way, shout out to Greg Dayton for writing that question in the chat. I appreciate that. Panthers Saints. Look, man. I, as a person who drafted Bryce Young in his fantasy league last year, I was heavily invested in that young man's success, and I like to err on the side of the youth out there, and Bryce Young take another step forward. It'd be huge if the Panthers could get this win over the Saints. The Saints defense possibly taking another step back. We'll see. I'll take the Panthers just off the hope of that youth will guide them through this one. Vikings, Giants, give me the Vikings. Like, I don't really even need to have this conversation. I think this game, obviously, defensively, this game is probably more than likely going to be very, very close when it's all said and done. I'm also interested to see what happens with Tyrone Purdy, who is one of the running backs for the Giants who came for Purdue. The Vikings overall feel like they're the better team in terms of talent. We'll see how it all shakes out at the quarterback position, but it's also like not that hard to be better than Daniel Jones. Patriots, Bengals. Give me the Bengalis on this one. Have not seen Jared Mayock prove himself to be a tactical mastermind, despite the fact that he was a really good football player, former linebacker. Steelers, Falcons. This is going to be so much fun because I guarantee you this: the Falcons are going to win this game, and they will start. It's going to start. You know exactly what I'm talking about. They're going to be talking about you should go home and hang out with Sierra, bro. This is the start of it because people don't have people don't have a high opinion of the Falcons just yet. They know there's a lot of hype around the Falcons right now, but they still don't believe in the team, right? Even though the Falcons, you want to talk about getting talented players together, it seems like the Falcons are like at the top of the list in terms of just like raw talent, football player wise. Texans, Colts, this should be a ton of fun. This is going to be two of the best quarterbacks in the NFL facing off against each other. And I said that, and I mean that from the chest. Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud versus each other with the Texans defense seemingly looking like it could be breaking. Seems like it could get in the top 10. But this game, overall, the Colts defense is like fucking amazing in general. Despite the fact that Matt Eberflus is now gone, he's with the Bears. The Colts have had like the most continuity on the defensive side of the ball, probably out of any team in the NFL the last 5 years. Anyway, I'll take the Texans on this one just because I like the X factor of CJ Stroud. I'm excited for this game. It's going to be so much fun. Too bad it's at noon. Too bad they're treating a primetime game like it's a noon game. Anyway, Cardinals, Bills, this will be fun. The chalk answer is obviously the Bills, despite the fact that it's pretty clear that the Bills are on the same track as the Saints in the sense of like a lot of talent going out and not a lot coming back in. Interesting. This could be one of the games that I feel like with what I've seen out of the run game from the Cardinals, I will take the Cardinals in this one. Plus adding Kyler Murray back into the mix with Marvin Harrison Jr., James Conner. Basically carried this team when Kyler Murray went down, and I can't wait to see him continue to do it. Once again, don't forget, James Conner, one of the best running backs in the NFL, after beating cancer like 5 years ago. Beat cancer. Anyway, Titans, Bears, fun game in the sense of like Titans fans are going to lose their shit if they lose this one because the hype is around the Bears. The talent aspect goes with the Bears. New coach for the Titans. There's a very real chance that the Titans get embarrassed in this one, despite the fact that they have a ton of talent. I'm going to go with the Bears. This is a good opener to. This is a really good opportunity for the Titans to go out there and show that they are a team that is going to be a playoff contender. We'll see. There's a reason that they're an honorable mention on my most likely to go winless list, and we'll see. Jaguars, Dolphins. This game should be so much fun because the Dolphins overall, offensively, Don't think they're going to pick up right where they left off or anything like that. Think they're going to be a highly effective team. Most people know that the Dolphins have what the Maryland Terrapins in college football have, where they play really good those first 2 months of the season, but that calendar changes and all of a sudden, everybody's forgotten how to play football. This could be the beginning of the death spiral for the Jaguars because Doug Peterson's definitely on the hot seat. Let's be real. Broncos, Seahawks. I expect the Seahawks to walk away with this one. We'll see how that shakes out. Chargers, Raiders. Expect the Chargers to walk away with this one. If you need a reason to watch this game, here's a free one. J.K. Dobbins is RB1 for the Chargers, and me personally, and maybe for everybody else watching at home, J.K. Dobbins carries the ball one time, and he's comeback player of the year, right? Has to be. His whole knee exploded 2 years in a row, and he's back playing elite level NFL football. Remember that time he came back and his leg was all, he was running real funny, but while he was running really funny, he was still pulling away from NFL caliber athletes? That was the crazy part. Anyway, Cowboys, Browns. This should be a ton of fun because, one, Kevin Stefanski should have been coach of the year last year, and two, I was saying it last year. Maybe Browns fans are saying it now. Deshaun Watson come out here looking like ass in this game. They have got to figure out how to get off this money. They have got to figure out how to get off this money, and I feel like there's no way to get off the money. We're gonna see. But the Cowboys should win that one pretty handily. But I've also seen how the Cowboys play defense in the back half of the season last year. But I have to remind myself they played defense at the beginning of the season really, really well. Expecting to see a lot better work in terms of run defense on the D-line up front, but who knows. Commanders, Buccaneers. I want Jaden Daniels to come out here and win this game, mainly because I don't believe the Buccaneers have actually fixed their run game. And also, Bobby is on the team. So I'm going to go with the Commanders off rip. Just, one, Commanders have upped the level of talent on their team, drastically. Rams, Lions, this should be fun. Kyron Williams, obviously, going up against the Detroit Lions defense that kind of struggled to stop the run a good chunk of the season last year. But the Rams overall, that's one of the teams that feels like it has changed the most in the offseason is the Rams. They found Puka Nacua, who had the greatest rookie season in the history of wide receivers ever. I feel like we all forget about that. Last season, we saw two of the greatest rookie seasons ever in the history of the NFL. And Puka Nacua at wide receiver, and then C.J. Stroud at quarterback. That's stupid rare to happen, ever. Lions, Rams. Man. It's hard for me to just sit here and go chalk with the Lions, but I think I'm going to do that. And then Jets, 49ers. Look, man, you know what time it is. This is Monday Night Football. It's almost like it's that thing that happened last year. I expect this to be low scoring and go for the 49ers. Just because I have a lot more faith in the 49ers late game than I do in the Jets throughout the course of an entire game. Don't like the way that basically the Jets have had multiple seasons blown up due to quarterback play, and somehow it's Robert Saleh's fault that your boy Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles, and then before that, we don't need to talk about the Mormon. But yeah, that happened. That happens. Anyway, that's all I got for week one. I am in a pick'em league. If you want to join my pick'em league, hit me up on Twitter at FB_playbook or hit me up on Instagram at the Ashton forever. I think that's, you know what? I know that's all I got. And I'm out of here before wow, of course. That stupid feature that Streamlabs had. If you've taken anything away from today's show, ladies and gentlemen, it is that Streamlabs sucks. I'm gonna dip out because Streamlabs closed my music app when I re-logged in. I love that for me personally. I love it for you. Don't forget, do good.